Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Melody Fox Ahmed. I'm the Director of Programs and Operations here at the Berkeley Center. Thrilled to see such a big crowd on Sunday, September 11th, 10th anniversary. It's wonderful that you're all here for this dialogue and discussion with Arun Gandhi, who we're so honored to have with us here today. This is a very special event in many ways. The Berkeley Center, which is now entering its 6th year, has a mission to promote religion in the service of peace, to promote better understanding of religion, to show that it can be a force for good, for unity instead of division, which is needed now more than ever in today's world. And especially that's something that we can remember today on this most special of anniversaries. I think we all remember where we were on 9/11 10 years ago. We'll have a chance to reflect on that today and what it really means for you here as almost the generation of 9/11. Your lives were so affected by that event. It's probably informed what you'd wanted to study, maybe where you studied abroad, what language you're studying, what job you might want to take. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And we're so privileged to have Mr. Gandhi, such a wonderful peacemaker, leader, truly a guru for so many of us in the service of peace here today with us. So he has a long list of accomplishments. I'll just introduce him briefly, and then he's going to share some words with us. And then we will be privileged to have a discussion with him, and then I'll come back with you afterwards and tell you some logistical details about the Unity Walk, which Mr. Gandhi is leading down Massachusetts Avenue today, starting at 1:30, kicks off at the Washington Hebrew Congregation. It stops at many houses of worships, the Islamic Center, many churches, Sikh Gurdwara. There's music, there's dancing, there's meditation, there's food, there's drink. We're going to be filming it. We have our great documentary team with us today. We have a lot of students in the room who have been working all summer on promoting the Unity Walk, and they'll be involved in filming this project. And it's really just such an honor to be able to share such a moving experience with Mr. Gandhi. So Arun Gandhi is the 5th grandson of Mohandas Gandhi and a committed advocate of the practice of nonviolence. He lived with Mohandas Gandhi for the last 18 months of the latter's life and later became a journalist and reporter for the Times of India for over 30 years and subsequently moved to the U.S. He founded the M.K. Gandhi Institute for Nonviolence at the University of Rochester and also taught courses on Mohandas Gandhi at Salisbury University. He is the founder of the Gandhi Worldwide Education Institute, which promotes community building in economically depressed areas by integrating Gandhian philosophy and vocational education. Gandhi is the author of A Patch of White and Legacy of Love, My Education in the Path of Nonviolence, as well as a regular contributor to the Washington Post on Faith site. So again, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Gandhi, and let's give him a hand.
Thank you very much. It's a beautiful introduction. I'm honored to have all your presence here this morning on a Sunday morning. And I'll be very glad to answer any questions that you have. As you were told in the introduction, I have done a lot of things in my life, and peace has always been the foremost hope in my life. And I'm hoping that even if it's not accomplished in my lifetime, that it will be accomplished in your lifetime. And so I would like to inspire all of you to continue working for peace in this world. So I just thought I'll make this brief remark and open the floor for questions, and let's have a dialogue. Who wants to be the first to start? Okay.
So one of the things that I want. Sorry. I'm loud, I can see. It's on? Yes. No. She's loud. I'm gonna stand by.
Yeah, that's a good question. On 9/11, on 9/10 actually, I had just come back from Chicago, where I had been to speak on nonviolence. And at that time, I was living in Memphis, Tennessee. And I still remember very vividly the morning I was sitting and having breakfast, and had the TV news on, and suddenly we saw this plane crash into the first tower, and I first thought it was a bad accident. Somebody messed up and flew in the wrong direction or something. And then I saw the second plane go into the second tower, and by then everybody realized that it was terrorist attack. It was a horrid thing, and the first thought that came into my mind was that this is an escalation of violence to a new level, that we had never thought of anybody using a commercial aircraft as a weapon of mass destruction. But today it has become a reality, and so we don't know where this violence is going to end. And that's unfortunately the tragedy of violence, that once you adopt the culture of violence, then you have to keep escalating it so that you can be more effective. The culture of violence seeks to control people through fear. And the more fear you're able to put into a person, the more control you have over them. And that's one of the reasons why we have been involved in this arms race, and every nation is trying to build more and more sophisticated arms so that they can have control over other people and prevent attacks on them and all that. And ultimately it doesn't work. When in the final analysis, it never does work. I mean, we have been fighting wars for centuries, and more than centuries. And yet we have seen that none of them have really worked. They just led us into more and more violence there. And all of these thoughts came into my mind. My response to this 9/11 attack was remembering something that happened in India, in the Indian history, which was not exactly the same kind of thing as 9/11 here, but it was also a very horrendous attack on the people of India. It happened in 1919 in the northern state of Punjab, when the British were controlling India, and they had imposed martial law in the northern state of Punjab because they wanted to try to suppress my grandfather's nonviolent action. And General Dyer was the governor of the state at the time. And in spite of the martial law, when my grandfather's emissaries came to the state of Punjab to speak to the people about nonviolent action, 10,000 men, women, and children assembled in an open ground in the middle of the city of Amritsar. And they were just standing there listening to this emissary talk about nonviolence and peaceful action. When General Dyer got news of this gathering, and he brought his troops and surrounded the group and opened fire point blank into the group. And in minutes, he killed 386 men, women, and children, and injured 1,680 something severely. And afterwards, he told the inquiry commission, he said, the only reason we stopped firing was we ran out of ammunition. If I had ammunition, I would have still continued to fire and kill more people. But when that incident was broadcast to the nation and everybody heard about what happened there was so much anger, just as we had the anger here on 9/11. There was so much anger in the people that if at that time anybody had lit a spark of violence, the British would have been massacred, because in 1919 the British were outnumbered 4,000 to 1. And they could have been wiped out from India. But that is when my grandfather realized that getting the people to use their anger or abuse their anger is not going to resolve any issues. What we need to do, and he told the people of India, he says, we need to recognize the fact that the British need to be liberated from their imperialism as much as we need to be liberated from their colonialism. So let's work together and try to liberate them and liberate ourselves. And so he channeled the anger of the Indian people into nonviolent campaign. And within 27 years after that incident, India became free without firing a bullet. And we parted company with the British on friendly terms. We are still friends of the British, and both the nations still have a lot of commerce and other connections between them. So that incident came to my mind, and I was hoping and praying that the leaders of the United States would also lead the people here not into a war that we are not able to put an end to, but into some introspection to find out why people in that part of the world hate us so much that they want to destroy us. What is it that we have done that causes them to hate us so much? And then correct our mistakes or whatever they may be, and build better relationships with people in that part of the world. And I think if we had done that, we would have been able to stop this terrorism in its tracks. We would have had a better relationship with that part of the world, and I think we all would have been much happier than we are today. It doesn't make sense to me that to avenge the deaths of some 3,000 people who died in the World Trade Center towers, we have sacrificed more than 7,000 of our young men and women, not to speak of all the hundreds of thousands of people who have died in Iraq and Afghanistan in the 10 years since the war. So where is the rationale there? I mean, sacrificing so many lives to avenge the deaths of 3,000 people, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yes, take your, there's some seats right over there.
Who's going to be the next? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
My question is, how do you suggest that we Americans and the Western world in general tries to create and maintain a better relationship with those in the East, or with those who stated that they so vehemently have hated us in the past?
Well, I think we need to do some introspection to find out where we have gone wrong. We need to do it at all levels, including personal level. Our interpersonal relationships are not very good either, and that reflects in our international relationships. We have people from all over the world have subscribed to a materialistic lifestyle. We are building a materialistic life and nation. And that generates in us selfishness and self-centeredness. We are always thinking about ourselves. What are we going to gain from this relationship? And if I don't gain anything from the relationship, why should I bother to cultivate it? So if we have that kind of an attitude, we don't have a good relationship. And that means that we are going to face conflicts all the time. Now, interpersonal conflicts, we may be able to just break off that relationship and go away, but you can't wish it away. Every time you break a relationship, you're making an enemy, you're causing distress, and ultimately it leads to some kind of violence in your life. And the same thing happens at the international level. You see the foreign policy of every government in the world is based on what is good for them, not what is good for the world. we all seem to think that we can preserve our part of the world and not bother about the rest of the world. That, we here in the United States can have security and stability in this part of the world because we have all the wealth and the strong army and all the weapons that we need and everything. But we can't survive here if the rest of the world is going down the tube. Our stability and security is dependent on the stability and security of the whole world. And the sooner we all realize this, the better it will be. Because, otherwise it's going to be a doomsday for all of us there. So we need to do this introspection and find out where have we gone wrong and what do we need to do to change the course of history.
My question is, what do you think can be taken or can be copied from your grandparents' peaceful movement in India to cases nowadays such as revolutions in Libya, Egypt, Venezuela, countries that are clearly unstable in the present?
I think the first thing that we need to do is to understand grandfather's philosophy of nonviolence in its entirety. We don't understand it, and unfortunately many of the scholars, both Eastern scholars as well as Western scholars, who have written books on this and done a lot of study of it, have, in my opinion, have looked at only one aspect of his philosophy of nonviolence, and that is conflict resolution. Now, his philosophy was much more than just conflict resolution. And I believe that if we don't incorporate that philosophy in our lives, in our attitudes towards each other, in our relationships with each other, and if we don't start thinking nonviolently and adopt a culture of nonviolence, we can't come up with a nonviolent solution when we face a conflict. And what is happening in many of these countries where nonviolence is being used to overthrow the dictators in those countries is they're using it in a very limited way. All they're concerned with is overthrowing the dictator. But after overthrowing the dictator, what are you going to replace him with, him or her with? You got to have a plan of action. What's happening in Cairo today or in Egypt today is because they overthrew Mubarak, but they didn't have a plan in place. And so now everything is floundering and they don't know what the next step is going to be there. So we have to understand the philosophy thoroughly there. And the way I was made to understand this philosophy was through a little pencil. I was a little boy then. I was about 13 years old, and I was coming back home from school one day, and I had this little pencil. It was about 3 inches long, and I thought to myself, I deserve a better pencil. This is too small for me to use. And I just threw that pencil away, because I was so sure that grandfather would give me a new pencil when I asked him for one. But that evening when I asked him for a new pencil, instead of giving me one, he subjected me to a lot of questions. He wanted to know how the pencil became small and where did I throw it away and why did I throw it away, and on and on and on. And I couldn't understand why he was making such a fuss over a little pencil until he told me to go out and look for it. And I said, "You must be joking." He said, "You don't expect me to look for a little pencil in the dark?" He said, "Oh yes, I do. He has a flashlight." He sent me out with a flashlight to look for this pencil, and I must have spent about 2 hours searching for it. And when I finally found it and brought it to him, he said, "Now I want you to sit here and learn 2 very important lessons. The first lesson is that even in the making of a simple thing like a pencil, we use a lot of the world's natural resources. And when we throw them away, we are throwing away the world's natural resources, and that is violence against nature. And the second lesson is that because in an affluent society we can afford to buy all these things in bulk, we overconsume the resources of the world, and because we overconsume them, we are depriving people elsewhere of these resources, and they have to live in poverty, and that is violence against humanity.
So a very general question, but my question is, how do you incorporate faith into the practice of your philosophy and your lifestyle in general?
Well, we have to first of all determine what we mean by faith. And I'd like to quote here a very poignant passage from my grandfather when he said that humanity has learned enough from religion to hate, but not enough to love. And what he meant by that is that today we practice our religions and we hate each other. And we are always putting the other religion down and saying ours is better and the other is bad. And that's not what religion is about. Religion is about finding peace and salvation and truth within your own self there. And religion is a way leading us to find that truth. And my grandfather used to describe all the religions of the world as climbing a mountain. We are all going up to the same peak, so why should it matter to anybody which side of the mountain we choose to climb up from? So he believed that all the religions should be respected, and we should respect every religion just as we respect our own. And to take this a step further, what he did was he incorporated prayers from every major religion in the world in his daily prayer services. So we grew up every morning and evening praying in a neutral place, like a hall like this, without any religious symbols, or outside under a tree in the open fields, where there were no religious symbols of any kind. And Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, everybody congregated there together, and we all prayed each other's prayers there. And that way we were able to forge that kind of respect and understanding of all the different religions there. So today I feel very comfortable being in a church or a synagogue or a temple or wherever, because I look at it as a house of God, not as a Christian house or a Muslim house, but it's a house of God, and there is only one God. We have different images of God and different names for God, but there is ultimately only one God, if you believe in that kind of theory of God. Not everybody does, but everybody does believe in truth. And my grandfather said that truth itself is God. So if you believe in truth, you believe in something.
My question focuses on human rights. Do you think that there's been a lot of, I think, in the international relations scholarship world, a lot of criticism of international organizations who don't really have much teeth on human rights? What kind of success do you think organizations like Amnesty International, the United Nations, that kind of thing can have on protecting human rights in the world? And do you think they'll become more prominent and more successful in the future?
I think we need to re-examine things. Everywhere we talk a lot about people's rights, but nobody has ever talked about people's responsibilities. We have a Bill of Rights, but we don't have a Bill of Responsibilities. Now, we cannot have a democracy or freedom or a viable society if everybody is doing their own thing and they don't have any responsibility towards creating a society or a nation. So rights and responsibilities are linked, and you enjoy rights to the extent you are committed to your responsibilities there. And I think we need to be aware of that and not just work for rights and fight for rights when we are not willing to shoulder responsibilities along with it.
Mr. Gandhi, I'm from Caracas, Venezuela, a country that right now there's around 40 to 50 deaths every week due to murders. It's a very violent society and there's a lot of political repression. So going on your earlier comment that the end of the dictatorship should not be the end in itself, but maybe a means, how do you transform a society that is so violent and get a movement to be more peaceful?
Well, I think today, if you look at all the societies, they are just as violent. I mean, it's just a matter of degree. Some are more violent and some are less violent, but everybody is violent. Even here, I mean, just this morning read in the newspapers of somebody going in a restaurant and shooting down innocent people there. And so these things are happening all the time, and it's just the whole thing, as I said earlier, is that culture of violence that has torn society so much that we have no interest in what is happening to the other people. Now, I don't know, I've never been to Venezuela, but I presume that like many other South American countries, there's a lot of poverty there, just as there is a lot of poverty in India. And so when you have this kind of a disparity and you see the rich people getting richer and richer and the poor people getting poorer and not able to sustain their life or not able to achieve any part of their dream, they're going to try to get what they are denied by any means possible. And for them, violence is the only means they can understand. And so they go and rob and steal and break up things and damage things and, you know, just be wanton violence there. We see, you know, crime in this country. I mean, this country is the most advanced country in the world. We are the most powerful country in the world, the richest country in the world, and yet we have the highest population in prisons. Yeah, and we continue to lock up more and more people every year. And that is because of crime, and we don't pay attention to why crime is occurring. But all we do every year is to escalate the laws and make it difficult and lock up people in prisons and throw the keys away, and then we forget about it. And that whole mindset comes from the idea that we can divide society between good people and bad people. That's what politicians always tell us. You know, we put all the bad people away in prisons and we'll have a society full of good people. But we don't see that. We locked up so many people and yet we still have crime going on. So there are still bad people coming up every year. Where are they coming from? So we have to understand that each one of us, each one of the human beings is capable of doing good things and also bad things. Depending on the circumstances you are facing and the buttons are pressed at the moment, you do good things or you do bad things. So what are we going to do? Are we going to destroy all humanity so that we can get rid of all the bad elements in society? It's impossible. We can't do that kind of thing. So the only thing we can do is to open our eyes to see people who are in difficulties, who are living in poverty and destitution and oppression, and what can we do to help them come out of that. Now that is not simply the government's responsibility. It's the responsibility of the society. And all of us need to do something, however small it may be, to make those people rebuild their self-respect and self-confidence so that they can be able to stand on their own feet and achieve things there. And that's why I created this Gandhi Worldwide Education Institution, which is an institution that's going to create these kinds of opportunities for the very poor children of the world, children who are living in so abject poverty and who are, likely to become criminals when they grow up because they have nothing else to look forward to. And we are going to give them some education, give them some vocational training, and show them ways in which they can become self-sufficient and be able to stand on their own feet. Give them a little economic support in establishing them, and hope that that will ultimately lead them to break away from the poverty. So these are kinds of programs that all of us need to do and can do to make a change in society.
My question focuses on what we can do as college students, because a lot of us are, since we're first time away from our home, we're trying to push boundaries, learn new things about the world, and we do have a lot of time to find out what we want to do with our lives. So how do you see us as like young people being leaders in this movement that you've suggested?
Well, I think we have tremendous possibilities. One thing that I have been very pained by, and I see this wherever, I do a lot of work on university campuses. I speak at the campuses and interact with young people there. And the thing that hurts me most is to see that the student body is as divided as the society outside is. That here you have come to spend 4 or 5 years together as one human family, to break down the prejudices and expand your vision, to understand and expand your knowledge and so on, and become better human beings. But you come with the baggage from society and continue to live with that baggage on your campus here. So your education is suffering to that extent. And I see this, when all the Indian students are in one clique, and then the African American students in their own little group, and the white students in their group, and the other ethnic students all forming their own groups and doing their own things there. Why can't you look at this as one human family and break down those prejudices and come together and learn about each other and teach each other about your own culture and things, and expand your vision? That is what education is. It's not just what you read in books and textbooks and what the professors tell you in class. It's what you learn from your own experiences. You learn more from your own experiences than anybody can teach you. What the professors will teach you is give you a career that can enable you to go out and get a job and make money. But what you can learn yourself by your own experiences is going to enhance you and make you a better human being. So it should be the objective of every person to become a better human being than we are. My grandfather used to tell us that every morning we should get up and make that resolution, that today I am going to be better than I was yesterday. And if we do that every day, we will be climbing that rung of the ladder and becoming a better human being. And better human being doesn't necessarily mean more money and power and all that. It means that you are truly a human being, a civilized human being who subscribes to compassion and love and respect and understanding of each other. The day when we can look at each other as human beings and not define people or identify people by their color or their gender or their race or nationality and all of these labels that we have put on people, that day we will truly have peace. When we can just look at everybody as human beings and respect everybody as human beings. And that is something all of you can do.
Dr. Gandhi, I'm in a peacemaking and peacekeeping class, and
well, we spent our first class, instead of talking about peace, talking about war. And when I suggested that violence is an option, it's not the only way to go, I felt that I was dismissed as an idealist, and people who believe that violence can be countered with violence are considered realists. So how do you encourage students who are studying peace, to see idealism as realism, to be as realistic?
Well, I think this example of the war that we launched on terrorism should be an eye-opener. I mean, we thought we are going to crush terrorists all over the world by launching wars. We are in 2 wars and we don't know how to put an end to them. 10 years we have been fighting and going on fighting, and there's no resolution. What it is doing is making more enemies for us. And ultimately, where are we going to end? Because violence begets more violence. Violence doesn't bring about peace. If it does bring about peace, it is very temporary peace, because it is peace that comes out of fear. When the other party is unable to fight any longer, or unable to sustain any longer, then they give up fighting and they pretend to be living in peace until they can gather their courage and the ability to fight back. And then it all begins all over again. We've seen this in history. It just goes on and on and on in history books. So we have to realize that violence doesn't resolve anything. It just destroys humanity, it destroys civilization. And today we have to question, are we truly civilized? The way we behave, the way we kill people and destroy people and things, is that the way civilized people behave? I don't think so.
I guess on kind of a related question, but given that sort of we live in a society that maybe hasn't developed in the climate of nonviolence, how do you respond to the claim that there are certain situations, maybe in which there's a group who's kind of being targeted or oppressed or victimized, certain situations that justify violence? How would you respond to kind of that claim?
I believe that we cannot create a totally non-violent society until we create a perfect society. And just as all of you have come to this university, and all of you have that ambition that you're going to get an A+ grade in every subject that you take, you work hard towards it, but you don't always get it. But that doesn't stop you from working towards getting an A+ grade. So in the same way, we must work towards creating a perfect society where violence will not be necessary at all. We may not be able to achieve it totally, but at least we are making an attempt and getting somewhere close to that. But if we don't make any attempt at all, then we go deeper and deeper into violence, and it destroys us as much as it destroys anybody else.
So today, as students of nonviolence, we look to your grandfather, we look to King, look to like historical parallels, like study nonviolence. Where did your grandfather learn nonviolence? How did he create this theory?
Well, it came to him when he experienced violence in South Africa. He went to South Africa with the intention of starting a legal practice, making money and supporting his family. But he became a victim of prejudices, and he was beaten up 2 or 3 times. And then he experienced 2 wars in South Africa. The first one was sometime in 1897, 96, something like that, the Boer War, when the 2 white groups, the Dutch people and the white Britishers, fought against each other to find out who was going to control South Africa then. Now that was more of a conventional war, where people had equal guns and they were equally strong and were fighting it out in a very conventional way. My grandfather didn't like it, but he said at least that is, you know, a humane kind of way or whatever. But then there was another war, which was the Zulu War, where the Britishers launched a war against the Zulu tribe in South Africa because the Zulu tribe refused to pay taxes that the British imposed on them. Now the Zulus were traditional people and they could afford only spears to fight. The British came with their guns, and that war was so totally, you know, unbalanced that here these people were fighting with spears and their hands, and the British were shooting them down with their guns, and it became like a hunt for the British. They were chasing after the Zulus who were running away from them and shooting them in the back like target practice. And when my grandfather saw this, he says, is this what civilized humanity has come to in violence and war? Is this what violence does to humanity? And that's when he stopped and he said, there has to be another way. And the dawn of the philosophy of nonviolence came about. And he started developing that and working on that. And then there were many influences during the practice or the study of this philosophy. He was influenced a little by Thoreau and by religious scriptures. He was influenced a lot by Jesus. He considered Jesus to be the first nonviolent activist. So there are all these influences that came about.
We have time for one more question.
Good afternoon, sir. Part of a tenet of Georgetown is that we are men and women for others. So my question is, when one does service, what attitude should we take before serving others and while doing our service?
Well, one thing that I was taught by my grandfather and my father was that charity takes two forms. One that comes out of pity and the other that comes out of compassion. And the difference between these two is that, and to give you a crude example, is that when we walk out into the streets and we see a hungry person sitting there, our first response is to dip our hands in the pocket, get $1 or $2 and give it to him and walk away from there thinking that we have done our good deed for the day. Now, we are not concerned whether that person is going to eat food or he's going to buy alcohol or drugs or cigarettes or whatever. We are not concerned. We just think that we have done our good deed and walk away from there. And that is out of pity. We feel pity for that person, we give that person money and get away from there as quickly as possible. But if we are to work out of compassion, as my grandfather suggested, then we would stop to think, why is this person incapable of taking care of himself or herself? What strengths does that person have that can be used to make that person stand on his or her own feet? And then help that person in constructive ways to achieve those goals, to be able to stand on his or her own feet and rebuild their self-respect and self-confidence. Now, people who have lived in poverty or oppression or destitution in any form, the first thing they lose is their self-confidence and self-respect. They come to believe that they can't achieve anything at all, they are useless, society tells them they are useless, they are no good people, and so they come to believe that. And they feel that they are dependent on society, and you know, it's only society that can support them there. And so we go on endlessly supporting people without achieving any goals there. One example of that is the soup kitchens that we run, that go on and on and on, day after day, feeding people, but we have never stopped to find out why do we have to feed these people? Why can't they be on their own and stand on their own feet. So the work, service work that we do has to be constructive and has to be positive. It has to build the person's self-respect and self-confidence and give them the means to stand on their own feet and achieve things. My grandfather defined this in terms of trusteeship and constructive action. And what he meant by trusteeship is that each one of us has a talent that we usually exploit for our own benefits to achieve whatever our ambition may be. It may be a talent that we have inherited, or a talent that we are born with, or a talent that we acquire through education, whatever it is, but we think that we own the talent, and therefore we use that talent for our own personal gains. Grandfather said that we don't own the talent. We are trustees of the talent. And as trustees of the talent, we should be willing to use the talent for other people as much as we use for ourselves, which means sharing and giving. But that sharing and giving has to be constructive. And it has to be geared towards making the person self-sufficient, making the person rebuilding their self-respect and self-confidence so that they can achieve things for themselves. That would be the best form of service.
Well, I just want to thank you, Dr. Gandhi, so much for this really moving and inspiring talk. And I think it was really a call to action, this question was a wonderful way to end this really fantastic discussion that we've had. The call to action to each of us to use our talents, to go out into the community, to do service work, also just through compassion with your fellow neighbor, your fellow man. The Unity Walk offers us a great opportunity to do that right now. There's an opportunity for service work, but the whole thing is about a mile-long walk. It takes about 5 hours, though, total, because you can stop in all the different houses of worship. And so the idea is that you meet, that you commune with people, that you're engaging in dialogue, you're meeting someone of a different religion, a different nationality, someone who lives somewhere different from you, talking to them, forming some relationships. And that's a way, I think, for each one of us to do our own small part in making the world a better place. So we really truly hope that you'll all join us. Mr. Gandhi will be leading it, and I just want to thank him again so much today on behalf of Georgetown and all of us here.